As a child growing up, we did a lot of hiking and we'd camp. But I remember as a small child, my dad especially would point things out. He'd show me a flower or point out an animal. I remember distinctly one time that he was telling me about the texture of a tree, and he had me come up and put my hand against the tree so I could feel what was in front of me. I am looking and listening.
My mom died. She left boxes of photos that she had. I started going through the photos, and I knew these people, but these were the aunts and uncles I grew up with at the family reunion. I knew who they were. And then I looked, and I thought, I have no idea who this is. That's a shame. I decided that I want my children to at least have the names on ones I know, so I can leave that legacy.
As a child, my family went to the place where my grandmother was born and raised, and those were the hills of Tennessee, Appalachia. I remember two things vividly from that trip. The first was the food. There was a table that had more food on it than any table I had seen before, and any table I remember seeing afterwards. The second thing I remember is my mother's cousin and his son. Both had the same round faces, the cousin with a balding head. What I remember is that one had a guitar, one had a banjo. I remember the music.
And so I said, you told me these stories growing up. Let's go over them again, and let's flesh them out if we can. As the years went by, my mother's memory became a little less accurate. She didn't remember the names as well. And I actually went back and talked to her and again got more information. She kind of fleshed things out for me. My mom was named after her grandmother. So there was a photo from the turn of the 20th century of this woman, Sally, on my mother's bedroom wall. So there, and my mom would tell me a story about her. Not to be too long-winded, but she had died when my grandmother was a baby. So I always kind of wanted to know a little bit about her because I didn't know her. And I knew that there was this big dramatic story about my grandma's birth. So I wanted to investigate that. In the box with photos, there were also handwritten things that people had said. And there was a cassette for my grandfather talking about his parents. I put the tape in the cassette player and started listening to it. And it was very garbage. Couldn't understand it. But I left it playing, and I was able to pick up a few words. And I realized that those few words, those few sentences that I came up with, were in a printed copy of my grandfather's history. Exact same thing as the cassette. Someone had typed it up. So I have it in its entirety. There were things my grandfather had written. There was a legal pad. He had written notes, and then he had torn the legal pad into little strips. So I'd have 5 lines of information, and then I'd have to go look on another strip. I don't know why, but I was able to find information from what my grandpa said. And that helped. I know stories change in families. My mother's stories changed from year to year to year. You go back, and someone else before her has told a story. And a person before them told that same story. And we're not 100% historically accurate. I know that. But I still think it's fun to know those stories and know what family, it gives you a bit of character, even if the story's not 100% accurate. Another factor in wanting to learn more about my family was based in a couple trips that we took back to Tennessee when I was a kid. I was there for Christmas, and it was magical because this was the 63, I believe, because we had to ford a stream on this road, this dirt road that went up into the mountains. And when we got there, there was this little ancient house, with a well in the front yard. And when the woman who lived there, it was actually my mother's cousin, when she needed water, she would go to the front yard, and it was just like the wishing wells you see. It was a rock well with a little roof on top of it. And she would take her bucket on the rope, and she would lower it down into the well, get her water, and crank it back up. So, as a child at Christmas, this was so nostalgic to be in this environment back in the hills. She had a rich stove, and I remember her cooking actually two things: pancakes on a wood stove and donuts. She made us donuts. So she took a cast iron pan and put some grease in it, cooked donuts for us. So this was Tennessee. But the second trip, we went to visit when the aunt who had raised my grandmother died. And she kept calling my mother by my grandmother's name. And it gave me this feeling of, this is where my grandma came from. This was the person who parented her. I knew this woman. I met her. And I met the kids who would have been nephews to that woman, to the woman whose photo was on my wall. These were her brother's kids. It was something I wanted to explore and go back and find out who these people are. I am looking and listening